Last month, the United States froze all frozen aid under an executive order. USAID, responsible for sending billions in humanitarian assistance, is no longer active, and Trump signed an executive order 14169 to halt all non military aid for the next 90 days. Because he wants to do a review of where all the money goes and if it actually benefits America. Now, this decision has already caused global outrage. Leaders from the UN, European Union, and major humanitarian organizations are calling it a disaster. Elon Musk, now leading the Department of Government Efficiency, calls USAID a broken system and believes it should be shut down permanently. So, what does this mean for the world? Who benefits and who suffers? And what happens next? Let's break it down. On January 20th, 2025, Trump's order immediately froze all U.S. aid programs. No funds will be sent to developing nations. No new aid contracts will be approved, and charities and NGOs that depend on U.S. aid grants are now left scrambling. However, military aid to Israel and Egypt remains untouched, and that sparked an interest in the debate. Why stop funding for food and medicine while keeping weapons flowing? The administration says national security takes priority. The man leading the charge, Elon Musk, has never been a fan of USDA. He argues that billions of taxpayer dollars get lost in corruption, mismanagement, and inefficient programs. And his department, known as DOGE, believes foreign aid should be fully restructured or outright eliminated. Musk stated, "We need to rethink aid. The current system is broken." But is it really? Let's look at the numbers. USAID manages over $40 billion a year. A portion of the funds go to emergency food, disaster relief, and healthcare. Another part goes toward economic development, democracy building programs, and foreign media support. Advocates argue that this money saves lives, stabilizes fragile regions, and critics say too much of it disappears into the hands of corrupt governments and inefficient bureaucracies. And a recent investigation found that over $340 million in U.S. aid have gone to Irish charities alone. Is that the best use of taxpayer money? That's one of the big questions surrounding this shutdown. Nevertheless, the decision has real world consequences. Millions of people in Yemen, Ethiopia, Afghanistan rely on USAID programs for food, medical aid, and shelter. Without humanitarian groups, they warn that famine, disease, and displacement could worsen. Pro democracy media outlets in Eastern Europe and the Middle East also depend on grants to fight government censorship. With funding cut, some of them may be forced to shut down, and the hardest hit organizations and nonprofits and international aid groups. Over 100 major charities and NGOs rely on USAID. Funding to operate. Many have already warned that if funding is not restored, they will have to shut down programs. And not everyone sees this as a bad thing. Some argue that the biggest winners in the situation is the U.S. taxpayer, with less money going overseas. More funds could be used for domestic programs, infrastructure, and economic growth. Others point out that the U.S. defense industry remains untouched. Military aid to key allies is still being delivered, meaning arms manufacturers and defense contractors continue to benefit. But perhaps the biggest geopolitical shift comes from China and Russia. With the United States stepping back from foreign aid, China is rapidly expanding its influence. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has already filled the gap in Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. If USAID is permanently shut down, China's global power will only get stronger. And the decision has already sparked legal challenges. The American Foreign Service Association and multiple humanitarian groups have already filed lawsuits, calling the shutdown unconstitutional, reckless. A federal judge has even issued a temporary order blocking mass layoffs at USAID. But even if the agency stays open, the Trump administration controls the funding. This means USAID may survive on paper, but remain powerless in practice. So what happens next? Well, there's three possible outcomes. First, USAID could be permanently dismantled. This would mean the U.S. completely steps away from global humanitarian aid, leaving other nations, particularly China, to take the lead. Second possibility, there's a partial return where U.S. aid, but massive budget cuts, stricter oversight. And third, perhaps the most interesting scenario, is a complete reinvention of foreign aid. Musk has hinted at using AI-driven tracking systems and blockchain technology to monitor every dollar spent, ensuring zero corruption and full transparency. And really, the debate is just getting started. The question now is, whether this decision strengthens America or weakens its influence. Some call it fiscal responsibility. Others call it a humanitarian catastrophe. What do you think? Should the U.S. shut down U.S. aid for good, or is this a mistake that could have long-term consequences? Let me know in the comments. And if you really want to get real, unfiltered analysis on global events, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next video, guys.